Talk Radio 1210, WPHT, WPHT-HD, WOGL HD3, Philadelphia. It's Dom Time. Brought to you by N3 Oceanic, makers of Rescue 1250. Now, Dom Giordano.
Hey, good Monday morning, everyone. Welcome in. All right, let me set the stage for you. Last week, I don't know if it was Wednesday or Thursday, we saw the results of this special election. A guy that we had on before, Scott Wagner, his name is, businessman, York County area. And Wagner, as a write-in candidate, conservative Republican, beat both the Democrat in the general special election and the hand-picked Republican candidate. We thought that was newsworthy. We had him on. We talked about what's your agenda going to Harrisburg now, and he brought up, hey, how come something like LCB, privatizing, the liquor stores, the ad nauseum of 90 years of this. And he said he was going to put his people, Republicans, on the clock on that. Why can't that be done? Paycheck protection. The issue that we shouldn't be collecting union dues for these public sector employees and handing them to the union as taxpayers. And he also talked about Wendell Young, who we've had on many times before, who heads up the union or unions around the liquor issue and is doggedly, and I think Scott Wagner said almost single-handedly, and I would agree, was a very, very big force in scuttling what came pretty close. The Assembly passed it, remember, but the Senate did not, to freeing us from 90 years of this nonsense. So we invited them both on to joust a little bit here on these issues to see how Wagner's doing in Harrisburg. And Wendell Young, let's bring back the newly minuted state senator, Scott Wagner, here on the Dom Giordano program. Scott, welcome back. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much.
And frequent guest over the years, Wendell Young joins us here again on the Dom Show. Wendell, welcome back.
Hey, Dom, thanks for having me, and Scott, congratulations.
Wendell, how you doing today?
Oh, good. This is all very, very good starting point here. Scott, just tell us what you said last week about LCB, the Republican caucus in the Senate, and the efforts of one Wendell Young.
Well, I believe that the liquor stores in Pennsylvania should be privatized. I just think it's an older system, and it didn't get passed in the last 2 years. And I have to give Wendell a tremendous amount of credit because he basically scuttled it by himself. But I just think there's a new day. If you go to Maryland, any of the liquor stores down there, a lot of times you walk in, there are delis in the liquor store.
Oh my God!
Different selection, that kind of stuff. So I just think there's, it's listen, we're still basically making buggy whips, and now we need to move on to something different.
All right, Wendell, yeah, and he did principally, and I would credit you too, or discredit you in my view, because of your efforts. You're very, very good at forming these ungodly coalitions there, including many Republicans.
Well, Dom, I can see it's 2 against 1 again. Anyway, I really appreciate both you guys giving me all that credit. I really don't deserve it. The credit goes to the issue itself. For 40 years, every time the Republicans, the conservative Republicans, get control of these 3 branches of government, they want to sell this asset. And the facts are what speak for themselves. This whole debate started out with Mike Turzai saying that the system was going broke, that we didn't make any money off it, that it had poor pricing and selection. With the exception of Delaware and Maryland that have a different tax structure, and in Delaware's case, no taxes on liquor, and Maryland's very little, but they tax food and clothing. Mm-hmm. Pennsylvania's selection and prices are far better than all the other surrounding areas. And the fact is that the system continues to make more money in both tax revenue collected and profitability every year, with few exceptions since the beginning of the system.
All right,
now,
Scott.
When you start, it's easy for folks to take shots at it in those general, broad-stroke ways. But the reason it's never been sold isn't because of me or other people like me that advocate for keeping it. It's the facts. It's very hard to unbundle this system without hosing the taxpayers of Pennsylvania.
Well, but I would ask you, Wendell,
less revenue
right?
For the
but
budget.
Wendell, wait a minute. Then why do the other 49 states or 48, whichever it is, why don't they have this same issue? Why don't they have a state system?
Well,
if this
it's
is so
actually
good?
not true to say 48 other states do this completely private. There are nearly 24 states that control alcohol in different ways. They're not the same as Pennsylvania, but in different ways. And if you look at each of the states that started with a system like ours and privatized, Iowa, West Virginia, recently Washington State, the taxpayers lost the revenue. The consumers who drink were hosed with higher prices, less selection. They could get it more locations. That brings on a whole lot of other problems, but they paid more for it and they lost the revenue.
All right, Scott, now this is an issue you've looked at too, and it should be a layup. What do you say?
Well, in a lot of instances, you can go to Maryland and you can have a larger selection of wines and buy them cheaper than you can in PA. I mean, it's in simple.
Most places that's actually not true, Scott. I think you probably are familiar with a few places. If you look at the overwhelming number of locations in Maryland, yes, you can get it cheaper in about half of the instances because Maryland only charges a small excise tax on the retail goods, including liquor, compared to Pennsylvania, like most states, it has layers of taxes, including. All right, well,
Wendell Young here and Scott Wagner. Let me bundle this into the big issue here too, Wendell, with you. That's another issue that we talked with Scott. And that is, we're tired of all these middlemen and all that. Just let us alone. The same thing with paycheck protection that Scott Wagner ran on or talked about the other day. Why should we collect the taxes for the public sector unions?
Are you now talking about paycheck protection?
Yes.
Liquor?
Yes.
Oh, well, look, this is no different than whether you're union or non-union. In Pennsylvania, many of the municipalities, like everywhere else, they've gone to automated payroll systems. There's a certain amount of slots available for deductions. And, people have their mortgages paid. They send bank payments. They pay into United Way charities. Most of those charities, most of those banks, insurance companies, and other places, they have political arms, too. So to say that you shouldn't allow workers to have the convenience to have one of those slots used to pay their dues because the unions use some of that money for political type purposes, then you might as well stop all the bank deductions.
Okay, we got your side. Scott Wagner?
Deductions.
Yeah, Scott Wagner, what do you say to that? It's just a slotting thing. It's not any big deal.
Here's a real. Someone goes to college and they graduate from, say, Millersville over in Lancaster County, and they get a teaching degree, and they go to work in the school system as a teacher. They automatically become a member of the union. They don't have a choice whether they can't go work in the education system, be non-union, and then when they and when they start teaching, they automatically have dues held out of their paycheck. That's. I mean, I thought this was America. We had a choice, and that's where it gets a little dicey.
That was a very simplistic portrait that actually isn't accurate. First of all, you have a choice of where you can work. If you seek to go work at a place as a union, you have a choice whether to join that union or not. You also have to fill out up front a form that allows the state or the municipality or the school district to deduct those dues. And you have a choice not to do that, too. So, people do have choices, but the reality is you also have a choice as a union member to elect your leadership, to vote on your contract.
But Wendell, wait a minute, Wendell. Okay, I hear you, but Wendell, what is it
that calls for deductibility?
Wendell, why is it when the union doesn't have the money deducted automatically, do union dues, and Wisconsin is one good example, go down tremendously?
Oh, because it's a huge effort to go out and collect all that money and to have people, having to go workplace to workplace all the time. We don't, that's pretty obvious. I mean, Scott here is in the trash hauling business. He has contracts with municipalities. He knows that it's a challenge to go collect money from people who don't pay, but that doesn't stop him from trying to enforce it, and we would do that. But this is a convenience for the workers, and they have the right to negotiate to use one of those payroll
How about
spots.
The taxpayers?
What about the taxpayers?
Taxpayers don't want it. In survey after survey, they don't want it.
Well, see, this is where you say taxpayers don't want it. I'm not sure the taxpayers really know anything about this unless they're the union members themselves. It doesn't cost the taxpayers any money. Many of the unions in Pennsylvania have agreements that they'll reimburse the government, the municipality, or the state.
It's not about the money. It's not about the money. It's giving.
The state can't put a price on it because it's baked into the.
Okay, it's not money. It's not money. It's the issue of doing this service for groups that a lot of taxpayers may disagree with.
But I heard
service. Dom, listen. the union has a right and under the law to negotiate all kinds of things, not just wages, but wages, benefits, pensions, working conditions. And one of the things that they have the right under the law to do is to negotiate so our members can have the convenience of that payroll deduction.
All right, I got your point now. Scott Wagner, do you have a final?
Okay. It's no different than saying that taxpayer money started out as taxpayer money and ended up becoming part of their dollar wage that they take home and deposit into their own private bank and do whatever they want with.
Scott Wagner, final word on paycheck protection. And you said that you're going to be pushing when you're in Harrisburg.
Wendell, I heard you say something that when someone's hired, that they can elect not to have dues withheld from their paycheck?
They actually have to fill out a form that allows the state to do that payroll deduction. It's a dues deduction authorization form.
Okay, so I'm not
the right not to do it, but workers don't do that because they don't want the hassle of having to pay that every week or every month. They want the convenience.
And what happens, Wendell Young? What happened?
Scott Wagner, Dom, this is being driven by people like Scott Wagner who have no problem contributing to like Citizen United kind of public welfare groups for a political purpose, subsidized by me as a taxpayer and you, because they avoid taxes on that money. But they don't want us to do it because they don't like the fact that their ideas aren't always good ones, and we're the ones pointing out that they're not good and they're not successful.
Scott?
Wendell, the money that I contribute to any political effort, I've paid taxes on.
It's not taxed.
It is taxed.
No, you don't.
Wendell, I get a paycheck. It's taxed. I paid all the taxes on my income, and then afterwards I am using that money. I could go to Atlantic City and spend it on gambling, or I could buy a big boat, or I could whatever, or buy racehorses. All the money I have given and continue to give, and this is the way it is, it's after tax.
Gotcha. Scott Wagner.
Those groups you give to are not reporting that money that you give to them as income. They're using it for political purposes. They're avoiding paying taxes. Groups like the Commonwealth Foundation don't pay any taxes to Pennsylvania or the federal government.
Wendell,
we end up subsidizing that as a result.
Okay. Wendell, I'm flat out of time. Wendell Young. Okay, Wendell, you got the last word in there. Scott Wagner, to be continued. Thank you guys, both guys coming on today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Wendell, I look forward to seeing you in Harrisburg.
All righty, there you go. Wendell Young and Scott Wagner here. And we'll bring you back on various issues.